Sammy Gravano, Mafia Underboss, speaks out after 2 decades of silence. Sammy, the Bull, Gravano, infamous for his role in the Gambino family and his betrayal of John Gotti, has remained largely silent in the public eye for over 2 decades. However, in a rare and candid interview, Gravano has finally broken his silence, revealing not only his reflections on the Mafia but also his perspective on the world that shaped him. In the interview, Sammy admits that despite the years and his change in life, his passion for the Mafia still lingers. "I still have passion for the Mafia," he says. "I think I'm part of the good, the bad, and certainly the ugly." Gravano goes on to explain that the Mafia is not just a gang to him. It is part of his heritage, tracing its roots back to Sicily in the 12th century. He speaks of the deep history of the Mafia, how it fled fascism in Italy, and found its way to the United States. For Gravano, this is a part of who he is. During his time in the Mafia, he was deeply involved in the violence and power struggles of the underworld. There were bodies all over the place, he recalls of the Mafia's heyday in the 70s and 80s. He also reflects on the role of a hitman. "When you make a mistake, I'm gonna be the last face you see. It's not the guy who pulls the trigger you gotta worry about. It's the guy who plans it." He admits that he did some terrible things, rigging trials, bribing people, and more. Yet, he claims that it was all part of his belief in loyalty and the Mafia code. Sammy also reflects on the betrayal he experienced from John Gotti. "I did so many things for this guy," he says. "I rigged trials, I threatened people, I bribed people, and he turns on me." Gravano believes that Gotti, in his efforts to avoid jail, sacrificed him, something he equates to being a rat. The betrayal stung, and Gravano, feeling cornered, decided to flip on his boss, turning state's witness. He reveals that Gotti's actions had a profound effect, calling it the same as a rat. Interestingly, despite his past, Sammy's views on the Mafia have evolved over the years. He acknowledges that while violence was once a key aspect of their operations, things have changed. "They don't do that as much anymore," he notes, referring to the decrease in violence in today's Mafia world. "It doesn't have to be fear," he explains. "Fear could be in a whole bunch of ways." He shares how, even in the absence of violence, a Mafia member's influence could be destroyed, by being ostracized and losing respect within the community. Gravano also reflects on how law enforcement has evolved over time. He points out that when he was active, each family had a squad of FBI agents working on them. Today, that number is down significantly, with most agents now focused on terrorism and drug trafficking. He credits the changing landscape of law enforcement for the shift away from the kind of violence that once dominated the streets. At one point in the interview, Gravano talks about his time in prison. After being sentenced to a 20-year prison term, he spent much of it in solitary confinement, where he battled health problems like cancer and Hashimoto's disease. "They said I was dying," he recalls. "I lost my teeth, nails, most of my hair, but I survived it. And I'm back out, making my life again." When asked about his regrets, Gravano doesn't hesitate. "No regrets," he says firmly. "This was my choice, my life." Despite his criminal past, he has come to terms with his actions, understanding that in the world he once inhabited, trust was fragile and betrayals were commonplace. His decision to flip on Gotti, he believes, was not just about saving himself but about surviving in a world where loyalty was conditional. Throughout the interview, Gravano makes it clear that he is no longer involved in the Mafia. "I've changed my ways, and I've moved on with my life," he says. He's now focused on a legitimate business and building a new life. However, even after all these years, his reflections on the Mafia remain complex. "I did a lot of ugly things," he admits, but he also stresses that he was part of something much larger than just a criminal organization. It was a culture, a legacy passed down from generations before him. Sammy's return to the public eye, after decades of silence, marks a dramatic shift. But despite the years and the changes in his life, he remains connected to the past. His story is one of power, betrayal, survival, and, ultimately, redemption. As he puts it, "I'm saying what you're talking about, it's interesting. But going back, what I'd want. It's a question that remains unanswered, as Gravano continues to wrestle with the complexities of his past and present. Sammy Gravano's life and journey reflect an ongoing struggle between good and evil, loyalty and betrayal, as well as between wrong decisions and redemption. Although he has moved away from the mafia world, his reflections on the past remain profound, showcasing the complexity of a man who once lived in the shadows of society. In the end, Gravano's story is not just about a criminal, but a lesson in change, awakening, and the pursuit of redemption. With all the reflections on the mafia, betrayal, and the difficult decisions in his life, what are your thoughts on Sammy Gravano's story? Do you think his transformation can offer hope for those who have gone astray? Share your thoughts in the comments below.